Hey, everybody, welcome back to All Rev'd Up from Christchurch Westerly. My name is Ben Barber. I'm the producer of the show. Let me introduce to you Father Anthony Dinoto. Father Dinoto, how are you?
Okay, Ben, I'm good. Can you see me?
Excellent. And we are live with the executive. Well, I can, and we are live with the executive director of the United Theater, Carly Callahan. I'm going to let you guys chat.
All right, Carly, thank you
I'll
for
see
being
you
here
guys
today.
soon. Enjoy the show.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay.
Hello,
So you're
Father
gonna
Dinoto.
Carly, how you doing?
I'm
Tell
very
me.
well. It's nice
So
to
you're
meet
new.
you virtually.
You're sort of new to the community, I guess, too.
I am
Okay.
new to the community. I have been in this role at the United for just over a year. I started November 1st of last year, and my family and I moved into a house just across the street from where you're sitting right now.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's great.
yeah.
You told me you live right over there.
Well, I'm right over there. I should have meandered over. Right now I'm in my office, but we have been in that home since the end of May, and it's been fantastic to be your neighbor. I have to say that I look at your beautiful church every day, and it's so stunning. And when the bells are ringing, it's magic. So thank you so much for all that you do across the street. It's great to be in community with you.
Well, I'm fairly new myself. I started here just in the last week in July. I became the interim rector after Father Sunil Chandy was called to be canon to the bishop in the Diocese of Michigan.
Yes.
And he was here for about 9 years, and I was rector around the same time at St. John's in Niantic. And I retired about the same time that he got this new position in Michigan. And we were friends, and we'd have lunch once in a while. And I told him that I was going to retire, and he said, "Well, I am a candidate for this job in Michigan. I'll let you know if I get it."
Mm-hmm.
So he called me one day, and he said, "Well, I got the confirmation that I've been called to this position in Michigan, and I'm going to be telling the vestry, the parish council, tonight that I'm going to Michigan, leaving." Mm-hmm. And the very next day, Caswell Cook called me up, who was the senior warden, and said, "I know you just retired because you reached the mandatory age of 72, which I had." And he said, "How would you like to unretire?"
That was fast.
Well, I had a 2.5 week retirement.
How was it?
Well, it was very brief. When I met with the bishop before I got called here, he said to me, "If they do call you, when do you?" This was like the second week in July, and I had been retired for like 8 days. And he said, "If they call you to be interim rector, when do you think you could begin?" And I was thinking, well, I said, well, maybe like late August, Labor Day. Mm-hmm. He said, maybe early August. So I actually started officially on the first Sunday in August. But the job of an interim rector is not just to babysit a parish, but to sort of guide them through this transition and discernment period. But tell me about your experience in Westerly. How did you find the community when you came here? Was it?
Well, I'm curious to compare notes with you because as two relative newcomers, I had.
Well, I have. Excuse me. I have to preface this by saying I was born in Westerly.
Oh, that changed. So you're a real. What do I call it? Westerlarian.
I guess I'm a real Rhode Islander.
Okay, I'm fake. I'm trying every day to be more. I grew up in Connecticut outside of Hartford in a town called Simsbury.
Okay.
And, I was most recently working in New York, but I was living for just about 14 years in Madison, Connecticut. Not too far from here. But
I worked in Guilford for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Madison and Guilford are like, Pawcatuck and Westerly. It's kind of one town, essentially. In fact, I think Madison at one point was called North Guilford or something. But anyway, I had some familiarity with this community because growing up, my family and I had a small sailboat in Stonington, Connecticut. And so we would on a weekly basis in the summer, pack the car from Simsbury, drive down, load the tiny sailboat, take it out, go around Stonington Point and into Watch Hill Harbor and
Nice.
anchor and hang out on Napa Tree Beach and get sunburned and sometimes sleep over. And that bottom is so sandy, invariably all the boats would drag in the middle of the night, and it would be a whole a whole kerfuffle. And so I had some familiarity with this community from many decades ago, but when I was first learning about this role in this position, Zooms led to an in-person meeting up here. And I'll never forget coming to Westerly and feeling this sense of cognitive dissonance and looking around and saying, wait, this isn't at all what I remembered of this community from, my goodness, that was back in the 80s, right? So, I mean, it's amazing to be witness to a community that just has changed, I think, in so many wonderful ways, but still has such respect for and celebration of its history and the components of the community that make it so very unique, but in the same space are celebrating what the community is evolving into, and all of the new people that are coming into the community and attracted to Westerly. And I meet people almost on a daily basis that seem to have a similar story, which is, people who now have a flexibility to work in a hybrid job, a flexibility to be in a city like Boston or New York once or twice a week at most, and come up here and just fall in love with these ingredients that make it so very unique and so desirable to such a wide swath of people. So in answer to your question, my family and I becoming a part of this community has truly been a joy. And, there's so many pieces of it to love. And of course, our first summer here was exquisite and busy, but finding time to go to the beach and jump in the water, and we're learning how to surf, and my daughters and I go clamming and all of those things. And then as the season transitions, how glorious is it to see the Christmas lights and the skating rink and, the downtown activities and everything else. So it's been really, really, really fantastic. And I feel so lucky that we're now here.
One of the benefactors of all this transition and transformation, of course, Chuck Royce,
right?
Being, have you met Mr. Royce?
Oh yes, yes.
I mean, he's, and the amazing thing about all of the wonderful things that have occurred in part because of his largesse and his vision in many ways, have not felt like an imposition of someone else's will.
Right.
It's really sort of like he's done things to enable people to celebrate who they've always been in some ways.
I think that's so well said.
Wish to be.
I so well said. And I would joke that in the beginning of my tenure in this role a year ago, every morning I would get up and endeavor to put on what I call Chuck goggles, which, was my attempt to be able to look around and orient myself to this community and not only see what's here, but start to have a sense of what he envisioned this community can continue to evolve into. And, that to me, the part of the United and this job and being a part of this greater community that was most compelling was how, there are these tent poles that have been created specifically and architected specifically in order to engender community stability and growth and welcome as many types of people as possible. And, public places like the park and the library and the places of business and the individuals that are entrepreneurs and creative spirits, and of course places like the United, they're all deliberate in the sense of being ways that a community can not just survive but flourish. And I've seen the opposite of that in so many ways. And when you kind of venture through this country of ours and you see the Westerly equivalents in so many different states, where instead of bringing community together and trying to grow and celebrate place, that whole idea is kind of abandoned, and you get suburban sprawl, and you get, the Walmart next to the Chili's, next to the, Hampton Inn or whatever it is, and everything looks the same. And so the unique identity of place, I think, is so very precious. And so many people like Chuck have done incredible work and giving us a gift that is really irreplaceable.
I think it's in many ways Westerly, culturally, economically, socially, religiously, is almost. I like to say that Westerly religiously is in almost like a time warp.
Mm.
You know, my job here as the rector, for instance, I'm the rector of a parish in a little town like Westerly. We have our average Sunday attendance is almost 4 times the average Sunday attendance of most Episcopal churches.
Wow.
And yeah, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And we have a community like Westerly where there are 5 Roman Catholic parishes, and pretty much all of them are pretty going concerns. And I think that there's something about Westerly. I don't know what it is, but it's like 30 years, not behind the times, but maybe it's ahead of the times. I don't know. But the people here really value family.
Mm-hmm.
They value their relationship. People, the old saying is that everybody knows everybody in Westerly. Everybody's a cousin to somebody in Westerly, which isn't always true, obviously, but it's always had that sort of dynamic about it, that everybody knows everybody's business in Westerly, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what all of these additions to the cultural and social and economic life to the town have been such a great addition. I mean, one of the, I think, metaphors for what Chuck Royce has done and other people is that what he did to the Ocean House, he didn't tear the Ocean House down and put up Trump Tower.
Right.
He tore the Ocean House down and replicated it.
Right.
Which is an astounding thing to do. I mean, urban renewal was not about replicating anything.
Right.
Urban renewal was about tear it down and build it up, and then demolition comes in 6 years later. Right. And what he has done is sort of reestablished the heritage in some ways and helped strengthen the cultural ties that hold people together.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and I feel like the urban renewal, when it looks like taking what was and tearing it down and building something completely new, is profoundly dehumanizing, because place is what, to me, is a core part of our story and our identity as humans. And at the United, I like to say that we're in the business of telling stories, and we are. And story, the setting is a key component of story. It's very difficult to tell a story that doesn't have place as the primary context.
Context is critical.
The story to be told, right? And so what's amazing to me about Westerly is, yes, I mean, it's so funny because the stories, or the kind of the lore of Westerly, in terms of people who have 400 cousins and everyone's related to everyone else. And, I sat down with the wonderful Nancy Burns Fusaro a year and change ago when I was first accepted this position, and would joke with her that I needed a whiteboard, with like the key names and but we decided that the whiteboard would have to be the size of the United in order to accommodate all the tentacles and the names and everything. So I gave up on that long ago. But, I think that Westerly uniquely has the context and the setting for us to all identify our own stories within it. And even for me and for my family, who are, months into being a part of this community, it's already feeling like the places within it are helping us orient the story of our own lives. It's really, to me, that's one of the most compelling, if not the most compelling piece of, why we're all working so hard to preserve it. And that's what's exciting to me too, is there are so many stakeholders in this. And, maybe arts and culture isn't your thing, but historic preservation is, or the land trust is, or, the conservation work, the nature conservation, There's a
Right.
million ways to
Community
go
chorus.
trying to, right, exactly. It's like the United is one of many, and that's awesome. And so yeah, I'm a big fan.
It's interesting that you talk about Westerly and you talk about relationships, and I think that the unique thing, maybe it's not unique, but in Anglican church history, there was a guy named George Herbert who was a priest, and his idea was that when you were assigned to a parish, whether it be St. Michael's or St. Swithin's or St. this or Christ Church, that you became the pastor or the rector, not of Christ Church, but you became the rector of Westerly.
Mm.
It was like the community was his parish.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like even now in New Orleans, in Louisiana, a lot of the towns are called parishes.
Right.
And that whole idea of Herbert's idea was that the assignment to this rector's position is you are the pastor to the whole town of Westerly. And in many ways, going back to all the clergy here, there's been an effort made here way back to, Jim Annan, who was a wonderful rector who later became the dean of the Berkeley Divinity School at Yale, and then David Jocelyn, who was rector here, who later became the Bishop of Central New York. And then you have Bob Anthony, who had been here for 18 years. I mean, they were all integrated into the community. They were members of the Lions Club, and Bob Anthony was chaplain of the fire department. I mean, and that's the kind of relationship that this parish has always nurtured in its history, I think. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff about the history of the church has endeared itself to the community, and some things have been very tragic. Like back in the 38 hurricane, all of our members of our altar guild went down to a altar guild members' summer home on Nappertree Point on September 21st, 1938, to have a picnic. And Father Tobin was the rector, and he had a funeral in the afternoon, but that morning he went down to visit all the altar guild members at their picnic at the house on Nappertree Point. Came back to Westerly, and the 38 hurricane hit, and they were all killed. And there's a monument here in our memorial garden in their memory. But I think that Christ Church has always sort of been like an anchor in the community. Like we just had our annual festival of Advent lessons and carols last Sunday night, and we had a very diverse roster of readers.
Yeah.
From every part of the community, from every faith, and from every relationship. And I think that's what Christ Church has always seemed to be to me. And I think that being into rector here is sort of like teasing me, because I really would love to stay here for the rest of my life. But
might you stay in Westerly?
Well, after they do call somebody, my wife and I live in Ledyard.
Oh, okay.
And we've lived there since the 80s.
Okay.
My wife and I actually, before I became a priest in the 90s, my wife and we still do. I was a funeral director, and we own a funeral home in Mystic that still operates next to the Episcopal Church in Mystic. But we'll continue to be. My wife said to me after I retired, because faithfully she has always been a wonderful partner in my ministry, and as much as she's always attended wherever I've gone. I got ordained in 1999, and I started out at Christ Church in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
Where I first met Chuck Royce 24 years ago. And then because we owned the funeral home, and she and our staff ran it, I wasn't able to locate somewhere else where I couldn't commute to. So I decided to do interim ministry for quite a while. So I would commute like for 2 years to Guilford, then I commuted to Durham, I commuted to Danielson, and then I became a rector for 10 years in Niantic. And so we've lived in the same house all this time. So she said to me, now that you're retired, I can finally go to church where I want to go to church. I'm going to go to Christ Church. And then I find out you're going to be at Christ Church.
What a kick. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. So she still comes, but
well, we may have crossed paths. I think probably I was in Greenwich about, let's see, about 20 years ago. That's both of my children were born at Greenwich Hospital. Yep.
Oh, no kidding.
Riverside.
Yeah, I was ordained there.
Okay. So maybe we were at St. Mary's in Riverside.
Okay.
Yep.
St. Paul's in Riverside, the Episcopal Church.
Yes.
Father Bob Taylor was my mentor, really.
Okay.
He was my rector in Mystic and then got called to be rector at Riverside at St. Paul's.
Right. That's a beautiful church. That was on our radar screen. We didn't end up staying long enough in Greenwich, but I believe they had a nursery school at St. Paul's that a lot of my friends
Yes, they did.
recommending, and that's a beautiful, beautiful church. A beautiful part of the world, period.
So it was ironic that I had been a parishioner in Mystic with Father Taylor when I first became an Episcopalian. When I left the Roman Church, became an Anglican in 82. And that's when we bought the funeral home right next door to the Episcopal Church in Mystic.
Okay.
So my wife was a Methodist and I was a Roman Catholic. We both became Episcopalians. And how ironic it was, years later, I got ordained in Greenwich and Bob Taylor was at St. Paul's.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty weird. You know, the two of us were walking down on Main Street one day, going to lunch somewhere with our clerical collars on. He said, "Look at the two of us." He said, "Who would have ever thought of this?"
What a kick!
Yeah. We should have had lunch before we did this.
I guess so. Well, there's we can do it after.
After the holidays, it's been crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. What's your schedule like at the theater now between now and the holidays? What's going on?
Crazy. I mean, we have so tonight is of course the holiday stroll downtown, which is great. Tomorrow night we're launching this Fellowship Film Fest, which is Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, the Fellowship of the Rings, Two Towers, and Return of the King. That's happening on subsequent Thursday nights between now and the end. On the Friday, we have the Speakeasy Choir. And the Speakeasy Choir is done in conjunction with our partners at the Course of Westerly. It is so fun because it's all are invited. You don't have to be able to sing at all, but they divide everyone into voice parts and teach everyone a song, and then it's performed with a band. And this Friday night, it's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, Brenda Lee's song, which has had a resurgence in popularity this year. So timing is great. And I think I read yesterday that she hit the charts as like the top, I don't know, something song of the week or whatever. So that'll be a lot of fun. We have on Sunday our holiday spectacular, which is run with our music school, the R.I. Phil Music School at the United, and it's kind of an homage to the Rockettes holiday spectacular. And it's a bunch of kids, and they're going to be singing and dancing, and it's going to be amazing. It's fully sold out. It's the hottest ticket in town. The light parade is that night, and then we have
what's the date of the light parade?
The light parade is on Sunday the 10th.
Oh, it's next Sunday. Next Sunday.
So that's going to be a whole thing, and a lot of fun. Last year for the light parade, which was my first light parade, it was this Hollywood moment because it all of a sudden started to snow, and it wasn't just little, it was like big, beautiful snowflakes that came down. And when Santa came in front of the United, it was just this, it was beautiful, but it was great. And then Wonka, the Willy Wonka new movie starring Timothée Chalamet, opens on Friday the 15th. We're doing a Wonka party. We do all sorts of cool parties in our gallery space, and this one is all candy themed. So we have a giant candy photo op moment. We have a candy tree in our lobby. We're going to have specialty drinks and everything else. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then we have our elf experience that following night or day on the 16th, which is the elf movie, but it's complemented by all sorts of interactive things, throwing snowballs and specific props and candy and everything else. That's also pretty much sold out. So that gets us to right before Christmas, and then we'll be taking a little bit of a nap, hopefully, because we've had over 55,000 people through our doors this past year. It's been a great year.
Well,
a busy.
Well deserved.
Yeah, so we've really pushed hard. I've got a fantastic team, and we're going to be the theater is open 365 days a year. So
That's
there's
amazing.
no like real break, but there's just kind of a de-acceleration of some of the craziness in the best of ways that's been going on here over the past year.
When I first went to Niantic in 2012, it's right on Main Street, and I found out, I got there in March, and I found out later after the summer was in the fall that there was a light parade in Niantic.
Oh.
And I said, what does St. John's do in the light parade? And they said, oh, we don't do anything in the light parade. I said, what do you mean? It goes right by here. Why don't you have a float? So the next year we had a float, and I'll send you the picture of it. But it was I did it up with the theme of Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and had all the little kids dressed up as angels, and I dressed up like St. Nicholas with a bishop's mitre and all that. And I called Parks and Rec to get an application the first year, and she said, "Oh, that's great, Father Tony." She goes, "What are you going to be doing?" I said, "We're going to have Hark the Herald Angels Sing with all the little kids as acolytes and angels, and I'm going to be dressed up as St. Nicholas." She goes, "Oh," she said, "we have a policy that there can only be one Santa Claus in the light parade." And I said, "That's the way it should be." I said, "I'm not going to be Santa Claus. I'm going to be a bishop with a beard." So I was St. Nicholas for like 9 years in the parade.
Really?
Oh yeah, I loved it.
That's so great.
Yeah. And of course, basically it's all my vestments that I have when I use my Santa Claus wig.
So does Christ Church do anything in the holiday light parade? Is there
I tried to get one. I just got here in August.
Right.
And I said, we must have doesn't anybody have a trailer or a float that we can do?
Right.
But we never pulled together. Maybe next year. I don't know if I'm going to be here next year as interim rector, but I'll probably be here as a parishioner, if nothing else.
How long does it usually take to find a rector?
Well, I've been an interim rector in 3 different parishes.
Mm-hmm.
This is my 3rd time. And sometimes it's 2 years. I was in Durham for almost 3 years before they got somebody. In Guilford, it was a little over 2 years. But in 2 of the places, part of the problem was they wanted me to stay. And you can't stay as an interim rector. You go there with full knowledge that you are pre-fired, basically. In other words, you don't go there to be a candidate.
Right.
But in this case, in the Diocese of Rhode Island, we have interim rectors. The Diocese of Connecticut, it's all technical terminology, but I'm an interim rector in as much as I'm the rector, basically, with all the authority and responsibility of any other rector. But I can't stay as the rector.
I see.
So we impanel a search committee, and the vestry does a lot of background work with focus groups, and the diocese has some input. So they're in the process of compiling all the focus group information and compiling a sort of a narrative of the life of the parish over so many years. And then they'll gather and do that in January. And then probably the search committee will, once they finish their profile and do all the information that they put out for the candidates, will start receiving names that are approved by the bishop. The problem that the Episcopal Church is finding is that we have a shortage of clergy, not in the same sense that the Roman Catholic Church does. We have a shortage of clergy only because parishes are some are smaller and not able to compensate a rector full time. So you come out of seminary with a big debt of educational expenses. You can't afford to go and be a half-time rector somewhere.
Yeah.
So I mean, parishes used to get 50, 60 names of priests who wanted to move and become a rector back in the early 80s and 90s. But now the lists are much shorter because a lot of parishes like Christ Church, we have gotten rid of our rectory at the advice of the former diocesan officials. So now you're asking a candidate who might be interested in moving to Westerly to be a rector to either have their spouse uproot their own position sell their house that they're probably in with a 2% mortgage,
Yeah.
move here to a house in a very expensive real estate market at a interest rate that hasn't been this high in 48 years.
Right.
So there's not a lot of mobility right now.
I
So,
never thought about it. That's fascinating. Where was the rectory originally
right behind me.
Okay.
There was a house right across the street, and it was a white elephant. I mean, I think when they sold it, it was a good thing, but I don't think. Well, hindsight's always 20/20. They did it on the advice of the diocese. It was costing a lot of money, and they made the decision to sell it. But I think what they should have done was sell it and buy something much more manageable. There wasn't such a money pit like the rectory across the street was. And so now we have no rectory. When Sunil came here from New Jersey, they had to buy a house. And I think the parish probably, we have the ability to sort of assist them with that kind of establishment financially. That's like a loan from the parish, which I think they did. So there's a way to facilitate it. It's just that there's a shortage right now. I'm a what they call a baby boomer. I guess you might be too, but
yeah,
you're probably too young.
A baby. I'm almost 50, so I'm like a boomer X person. I'm right on the line, but yes.
Yeah, I was born in 1950 when dinosaurs roamed the earth. So, and there was an article in a church magazine recently called the title of the article was O-H, stay boomer. And it was basically an appeal to people like me to stay in ministry because we're needed. You know, a lot of people are retiring. The pension fund gave a golden handshake to a lot of people to retire early. So it's an interesting time. I mean, I would love to, but it may take a little longer. But the history of Christ Church too is that before Sunil came, there were two other rectors that had been called here, and for various unforeseen circumstances, their tenures were cut very short. One was 2 years and 1 year.
Oh wow!
And that was after a year and a half or two of a prolonged search for each one of them. And without going into the details, it created some turmoil here that they survived. And Father Jim Bocchino, who was the interim back then, and then when Sunil came, I think they did a great job that prevented this place from going down in flames. Yeah. And now it's thriving. We're getting new members all the time. I just met a new parishioner this morning at the Wednesday Mass, and it's a dynamic place. People, I would say probably 70% of our parish is former Roman Catholics. And so someone asked me once, why did you stop being a Catholic? I said, I haven't. I stopped being a Roman Catholic. But if you came to church, you would know the difference, except there might be a woman celebrating Mass.
Right. Now, I grew up Catholic as well, and my husband is a professor at Providence College, so
sure,
and was on the board and graduated from Fairfield Prep and everything else.
But
I had the pleasure of being one of the readers at last year's lessons and carols, and just fell in love with the church, and I agree. It was I was struck by there was a reception afterwards, and there were so many people and so very welcoming, and it just felt very vivacious and very dynamic, and definitely not what I would assume is the condition of unfortunately a lot of parishes across the country that aren't that. But this felt very, very alive, and the space itself, the church itself, is so beautiful. It's a beautiful place to be in, period. And not just from the inside, but from the outside. I mean, that steeple that you have with all the different colored, what is that, slate? I mean, it's gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Yeah. It's really a gem, and we just celebrated the funeral of Bishop Jocelyn about a month ago, who was a rector here for many years. And his David Jocelyn's DNA is all through this place, as is the DNA of Father Anthony and Father Anand. The 3 and 4 that they created a real special place here. They help make what it is, and the people are amazing. Um, that's why I always wanted to be rector of this parish.
Mm.
When I was in seminary, I think I told you I would come here every weekend as
Right.
my field replacement. But I went off and I had a wonderful ministry other places. But I think that what I'm finding here now is that, and I think it's somewhat unique. Because I don't know everybody, still on Sunday when I go out to the front door as people leave, I'm still saying, "Have we met?" Because I'm terrible with names. I have to write people's names down,
Yeah.
but I can't remember. Yeah, so I say to them, "Have we met?" And last 2 Sundays ago, I said to a couple when they were coming out of the front door. I said, "I'm terrible with names. Have we met?" She goes, "No." She said, "This is our first Sunday." So,
Oh,
and then the couple behind them, I said, "And tell me I forgot your name." She goes, "No, we've never been here before." So we get new people every Sunday. It's unbelievable.
that's so
And
great.
it is great, you know. And
That's so great. I get the same thing at the United. I mean, it's
yeah,
you know, there's the faces that I see over and over again, and that's wonderful. And then there are people who are just brand new. You know, we had a concert this past winter, or spring rather, where we were, of course, IDing at the door, and we had over 30 states and 3 different countries represented.
really.
That's Yeah, and we had a concert, 2 concerts in a row. Last month, it was this Ukrainian band. They were amazing, called Daka Baraka. And then the following night was this musical evening with these 4 different female singers that had come together at a folk festival and then toured together. And I met this couple from Alaska, and they had seen that these women, they thought they were fans of this group of women, and they had seen that they were playing at the United, and then also saw that Daka Baraka was playing the night before, and they made a trip from Alaska all the way here, and they rented a Airbnb in Mystic, and they made a whole few days of it, and I could not believe it that they were from Alaska. So so that's obviously not every day here, but I share your kind of wonder at the number of new people that are coming into our collective doors. It's awesome.
Yeah, I really haven't seen it happen in other ways. It may be the time. I think we live in a very what's the word? It's a precarious time, I think.
Yeah.
Internationally. And I think that, I've seen these waves of interest in faith communities, like when 9/11 occurred.
Right.
But I think I think part of it too is that we've finally, hopefully, survived this awful pandemic that sort of really transformed our lives in very negative ways at times.
Mm-hmm.
We're now in recovery from that and realizing that a lot of people are really shunning the idea of being isolated.
Oh, I agree.
They're being engaging where they may not have had the motivation, but there's a motivation to it to really take part. I don't know if you ever read the book by what's his name, Robert, called Bowling Alone.
No.
Is a Harvard professor who wrote a book years ago by Robert. What's his last name? But the whole idea is that we're losing the impetus to engage with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, when we do engage in the book, he says when we engage, those are opportunities to gain social capital. Robert Putnam.
I'm writing it down right now. Robert Putnam.
Robert Putnam.
I'll check that out, because that's the work that we're doing every day, is trying to bring people back into space. And when I was leaving my job in New York, I said that I was moving from a job to a vocation.
Yeah.
And I have, and the mission behind that vocation is I saw, you saw, we all saw the consequences of what happens. And I think we will see, by the way, the repercussions of this for the rest of our lives.
Oh,
but the consequences of what happens when we all disengage from one another and we become individual humans sitting on our couches with our devices in front of us, not intersecting, not interacting. And it is a world that I do not want to be a part of, and I don't want my kids to be a part of. That kind of, so, and I feel like you, when I see people come back into space together, there's a certain relief, a joy, an energy, and it's people would say to me all the time, why are you going to be running a movie theater, which is, the United is live events and movies and education and art and everything, so it's a lot more than a movie theater. But I would, when they ask specifically about film, I would say, the difference between sitting on your couch and watching something on Netflix and sitting in a theater and watching a film is that you could be in a theater and see someone 3 rows ahead of you, a complete stranger, and they have a tear trickling down their face, and you too are having an emotional reaction to the same thing you're seeing on the screen. And there's a recognition there of a shared humanity and empathy and, sense that we are not on this journey by ourselves. We're on this journey as humans together. And I believe so strongly, if we lose that empathy, it's game, set, match. Honestly.
Well, exactly. And I think the parallel to that, from my perspective as a priest, is that that's what our worship is.
Yep.
And that same idea, that empathetic bond, that relational connection that binds us together and strengthens us and enables us to appreciate, like in your context, our context, is what we cannot lose. Right. And we're risking losing that. I mean, they're teaching. Somebody told me, I think I read it in the Wall Street Journal last week, that there's actually a new course being offered. I don't know whether it's in Columbia or somewhere, a course to teach people how to carry on a conversation. And this was a mainline school. And I thought, my God, where have we come?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I fear that, and this makes me sound like an old person, but I fear that there's a transfer of knowledge and practice that we're in jeopardy of losing. And if we lose that, then it's not like the next generation is just going to pick it right back up. I think I think COVID taught me, at least, but I think it taught a lot of us how precarious that kind of assumption of being able to do things like engage in conversation, be in a room together, understand that my point of view and your point of view may be different on some things, but we're both human, and we're both, like, all of those things could be lost like this. And and we were darn close. So I agree with you. We're trying to do the same thing, which is to bring people together. And so I push up again. I plead with people to say, please, if you're sitting at home and saying, well, maybe I'll just watch Netflix, or maybe I'll go see this film that seems interesting, come to the film, come to the book talk, come to the concert, come to the thing, not just for the sake of supporting a nonprofit, not just for the sake of maybe seeing something that may cause you to think differently, but just to support the fact that being in space together with other human beings is an important thing to do. And if we lose it, it's gone forever. Yeah.
And Putnam, by the way, did write a sequel to that book years later. I can't remember the title of it. But, I've never forgotten that book. That was 25 years ago when he wrote the first one. But I think that, that social capital, what he talked about, gaining social capital. I just saw a thing in the paper the other day, the New London Day, that there was a town, I think it was in Preston. Nobody was interested in serving on this board.
Right.
And that's what Putnam talks about, serving on a board. I mean, I was president of the Mystic Lions Club 38 years ago.
Right.
I'm starting to sound like a dinosaur, no. But we had over 100 members. And now I would guess they don't have 100 members. Not even close. So, well, Carly, this has been a delight. I'm glad to have had this opportunity to chat about all this stuff. And
likewise, I'm so glad to. I think it's so silly as we're talking about this that I'm, a quarter of a mile from you right now. But we'll have to get together in person.
You're about a 9 iron away.
Exactly. Well, we'll have to get together and practice what we collectively preach, right?
Exactly. That'll be our promise.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. It's been great to talk with you, and thank you for giving us the time.
Oh my gosh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you so
Good.
much.
Wish you a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
Thank you, Ben.